Hi, you're listening and watching the Mindset podcast spelled with AI, a tech podcast that is shaping what you know and think about AI. My name is David. I'm a tech journalist and entrepreneur, and as always, here with me is Filip, an AI executive. It's been a while since our last episode, and this time we are prepared something fun: token pricing. I know it doesn't sound super fun, but I think it's fun. So Filip, let's explain why this topic, why now, what will anyone listening or watching take away from this conversation?
Yes, so it's not only for the fun of it. If it was only fun, we would have quite a few other topics to discuss, but I think it's well situated into what's happening, and it's also having strategic implications. So the key thing that it brings this topic to our table today is that the changes in open source and open weights models implementations and availability, plus the token pricing, is creating a cocktail, which is probably going to also shape the strategies of the frontier labs. And that's a moment where we should probably take a time and discuss it. Maybe start with what the rooting factors are and why is it happening. But mostly, I think our audience would appreciate to understand so what. So we see all these trends happening. They are pretty obvious if you watch the AI, but what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my business? What does it mean for business of the AI labs? That's the focus of today.
Okay, so we'll keep it practical in the end, but let's start with the beginning. Like, why is it suddenly such a big question? Because it is a big question. People discuss it a lot online. Especially with the rise of the Chinese models and comparing it with the some would say overpriced US models, especially those frontier models that are sometimes even 20 times more pricier than the Chinese models.
Yes. So you remember that for our other podcast that we are running together, I vibe coded an app which is tracking the prices of the models on a daily basis. And what is interesting stemming out of it, that there is basically three plateaus, three different levels of pricing. So there is like a frontier, Fable 5 kind of models. Then there's, let's say, a mid-tier of, usually, Gemini, Mistral, and similar things. And then there is a Chinese level. And they are, each of them, separated by the order of magnitude. So the best frontier models are about 7 to 10 times more expensive than the Gemini models, and then actually are 10 times more expensive than the China models. So the difference is really huge. So as a result, no surprise, those companies which are short on cash or are kind of budgetary responsive are mainly using open source models or open weights models to drive their applications. And it's becoming visible in the data as well. So based on aggregators like OpenRouter or statistics of the API token consumption, it is evident that already in the US, so it's not like other countries where it's probably, Europe would be less surprising in this regard, but in the US, already 1/3 to 40% of all tokens purchased by APIs are already an open source, mainly China models, and it's increasing. So the trend is going up. What is even more important is that in startup area, so these are the companies which are launching new business models, new ways, new implementation approaches of the AI, the share of open source solutions is 85%, 86% actually. So that tells you that all those thinking about new ways of using AI are not taking the frontier labs as the first thought, and they rather go for providers or solutions which are open source based. So that's one major trend which is happening.
I actually read a piece in Wall Street Journal that was saying that actually the frontier labs are hunting the startups and offering them like some kind of like free inference to start with, just to choose them. So I guess this speaks to what you just said, that they are choosing increasingly the Chinese models. For some time we've been talking about the Chinese models as they are like 1-2 years behind. More recently, it's been 6 to 9 months. Like, are they good enough, or how good they are compared to the frontier labs so that I'm totally okay to choose it and build a new startup actually with these?
This is exactly the second important trend, which we should mention before going into debate of where it goes in future. Because, as you rightly said, the gap has been very evident. The standard was about 15 to 20% behind for about 9 months. That was. So basically, unless you were okay to be 9 months behind with, let's say, a 20% difference in output quality, you would not go for open source. Now, in last 2 or 3 months, this has dramatically changed, mainly because China is using its, let's say, a quantum advantage in terms of there are only, let's say, 2-3 main labs in the US who can generate frontier models. However, there's at least 7 well-known ones in China. So all they need to do is they need to kind of rotate every month or two. Some of them are bringing new models, and it will create impression that the Chinese models are progressing. And if they combine in a single month, which happened last month, that we had like 5 or 6 releases from the Chinese open source providers, then it's evident that the gap is closing. And the recent numbers say that the gap is about 7 to 10%, so it significantly closed down. And the time difference is about 3 to 5 months, depending on like which area. So that's already a situation where you probably don't care about 5% difference, or that you're going to have, like in 3 months, you're going to have the same quality as you have the most expensive model we can think of. Maybe it takes 2-3 months to develop the application in the first place. So you're already shooting for, okay, by the time I get there, by the time the application is ready, I'm going to have a model which is good enough as the best ones you can buy now. So that's even accelerating the trend of what will be the strategy of the AI labs, how they're going to fight this, and how they're going to sustain this push for being the best or having the best model, which is extremely capital expensive.
Okay, so we have this situation now, and so let's get to the prices of the tokens.
Yes, so token price is an interesting phenomenon because now it's not clear which way they should go. Because there are some forces for pushing up and some forces for pushing down. So if we were only purely discussing the economy theory, they should be going down because the competition is increasing, and especially you have Chinese players which are offering more and more at par services for significantly lower prices, like even 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than the best ones. So that would bring you to the point that the total token price paid should go down, but it doesn't say what the list prices do. And the fact that the Western labs and some Chinese ones as well are entering market through public offerings, through IPOs, that brings them to a profitability push. So if they are rational and if they have to defend the interest of the shareholders, then they should be rather increasing the prices to become profitable. And so the way that they try to fight this war so far is that they try to bring the new models and price them heavily, as was the case with Fable 5. There is a reason why the Fable 5 availability for 3 times extended and now ended up in the max tier anyway available, because these are the people who are willing to pay extra. And so I think that the strategy for the Western labs, if they could choose, was to run the premium models for even like ever increasing prices, and finding a way how to convince more and more people to consume the premium instead of the, let's say, mass products which more lean towards the open source. What will be the end result, like how these forces will mingle together and what will be the final weighted average change of the tokens remains to be seen. However, the down forces seem to be a bit more stronger. So I would assume that the token prices might decrease in like average purchase price, but list prices probably will not.
What is China's strategy here? Like what are they looking to achieve with this like new openness that they have found in themselves?
Yeah, I think what is China doing really clever is that they don't think in national pride dimension anymore. For a few years, the race between the US and China was about who can claim or boast the most powerful model, because realistically, the models were not in a sphere where even if you had the best one, you could do a lot of harm. Now we're getting to the phase where if you have a best one, you could do a lot of harm from like a security point of view. So the interests of the state are still probably to the best model to come from their jurisdiction or from their kind of country of origin. However, the business not anymore. Because for business implementation, you don't need stronger models anymore. I mean, the models that we have are good enough to do most of the use cases that you can think of, or are becoming an overkill for what you need, especially even in coding. Like we're running on a Fable 5 plus Opus 4.8 combination in coding, and quite often there are only few things where I would like to Fable to have a go, because there are some things which I see that it's gonna do the same thing as Opus 4.8, just burn twice more money to make it happen, right? So China is very clever to step out of the race and there's a kind of obvious shift in their strategy in last month or two. They stopped fighting for the best model. They started to fight for the most, let's say, the biggest penetration of the model into the business. And if you think about it, the way they do this is they want to win the inference game, not the training game. So if you want to win the usage game, the inference game, then the best way to do it is to offer a relatively cheap alternative so that you bring down the costs of the users to think about it. And I mean, I don't want to be too cynical, but if you look back into the history of a China business, this is what they have been doing ever since. Like they were trying to come up with a cheap to produce, sometimes even dumping the prices to go as low as the others can, wait until the others die, and then just colonize the market. So I'm not sure if this is as simple from China this time again, but it could be. And on top of that, they probably also have some strategic interest in, because one thing which was super interesting is that the security expert also noticed that the Chinese models are more benevolent when it comes to cybersecurity. And I think this is one of the reactive moves of China, that they got to the point where they see that, okay, what is like running on a nerves, what is stepping on the toes of foreign governors, and that's the security. So let's release models which do not have these limitations in order to encourage people who are seeking this kind of using AI for cyber security defense, maybe even, that they have to go there. And I think the best illustration of this was the recent incident of the OpenAI breaking into the Hugging Face. I'm quite sure you heard about that. Because the irony of the whole thing was that a Western model break up into the Hugging Face, and Hugging Face was not able to use a Western models to defend itself. So it has to use a Chinese model to defend itself against a Western model attack. And that's, I think, a telling sign that some things are moving in the way that we perceive the Chinese models and their strategy.
Let's get back to the frontier labs in the US. We've seen SpaceX go to have an IPO. Anthropic is preparing an IPO, I think, for October.
Yep.
OpenAI, we don't know. Might happen next year, might happen suddenly this year, who knows? But they are also like in the phase they need to go to the market. Yep. It's an inevitable. And the thing that there has been a discussion about was that what will the IPO mean for the prices of AI tokens and for basically the inference?
Yes, so I don't think that the IPO itself is going to do a lot of difference for the token price as such. It's going to significantly change the strategy of the labs, because there's a good saying that once you turn into the profit, it becomes a target. So when you're on a stock market and you are profitable, the stock market is going to heavily punish you if you stop being profitable. So I think that the AI companies do not have a lot of choice there. And Anthropic seems to be pushing for the profitable part because they can. This may be the reason why OpenAI is a little bit delaying their entry, because maybe they are not sure if they want or can play the game the same way as OpenAI does. So, but I do think that the IPOs will have effect, but rather on, let's say, a frequency and intensity of the model releases. This is where I think that the IPO will play a role, because they will need to change that, because the era when they were burning like a huge capital just for the like having a few weeks of fame of having the most powerful model is gone. They need to now monetize it. So I think that the frequency of releasing new models will change, and I suspect it's going to slow down rather than accelerate. When it comes to token prices, well, as I said, the IPO will cause the companies to wish for the average price to go up, but this China position is going to make it extremely difficult. And we do see already in the open source models and open weight model becoming so popular that if you push too hard for the price, people are able to run to alternatives. Ultimately, I think the only thing which can save the frontier labs here is where the capacity will be. Because even an open source and open weight models of a size which are comparable with the, let's say, GPTs and Claudes of the world, you still need to infer it from, let's say, a big provider. I mean, you can have your own for private use, but for commercial use, you will be not able to run it on your own computers. And also, it wouldn't be the idea to do, to be quite honest. So what can save the American frontier labs is that the government would somehow push that it's insecure to operate in clouds of the Eastern providers, of the Asian providers. And the moment that you make it like somewhat mandatory to use the cloud of the Western providers to be deemed to be secure, then they have a power, like Amazon's, Microsoft's, and the Googles of the world have a power which model will be served and for what pricing. So I think that's the only hope for them, that they can somehow contain the problem of inference by the capacity. However, this strategy has one loophole, and that is the neoclouds. Because what we see now that most of the open source usage does not come from Amazon customers or Google customers trying to do maybe Google to some extent, but definitely not Microsoft customers running in open source models. It's those who really need to run their open source or open weights models turn to like quasi cloud providers, neoclouds, who are more favorable and for whom this is a business model to run the open source models with a rented GPU capacity.
What about the lever that the big AI labs have through their harnesses, right? Because they are tied to a certain model that they provide. So if you're using an app, you got used to the app, be it Claude Code, be it Codex, or I don't know if anyone is professionally using AI Studio from Google, but maybe. Is that something that can, to some extent, keep them from, the customers from switching? I mean, I got used to it, and it's like I've been using Claude Code, and for the past month, I've been listening like, oh, Codex is actually like, you will not be hitting the limit so much. The output is comparable. And I was like, oh, maybe, but I got so used to the app that there's just like the psychological, switching cost included, which is like pretty high.
Yes. So we're moving from the trends to what the play of the individual players are. And this trend which you name is going to be an important one, because if we believe that the tokens will get commoditized, which is where it seems to be trending, right? So a lot of the frontier labs are a little bit fearing of the fact that the China models will put some kind of an anchor into the mind of a customer. Same way that a media had an issue when the internet started, because all of a sudden the media articles or like a content was deemed to be free. And then the media was struggling back to come up with the paywalls to actually charge for the content. So a little bit of a similar concern is for the frontier labs. So if it commoditizes, which is likely scenario, then the only way for you to go out of it is try to not sell tokens by amounts, by kilos, but try to sell it as bundled into something. And this harness can be probably well compared to the strategy of another industry, which we all know, and that's the car industry, where the German producers of, let's say, middle 20th century, or late 20th century actually, got into the point that they didn't want to mainly focus on the mass market, but they wanted to focus on the premium market. So all the Porsches and BMWs and Mercedes of the world, where basically, yes, like Mercedes has a series model, which probably is a relatively kind of mass car auto, but with a premium appeal and a premium price tag as well, right? So I think that a lot of the frontier labs and related companies will try to give you an impression that it's not the underlying engine that you're buying as it is in the car, by the way, which was good by itself in German cars, but it's the aesthetics, the look and feel, the how you drive it, the BMW has, I think, the joy of a ride, right? Slogan. So how you actually use it. So yes, the productization of the models is very likely. And what also that means is that this will force the frontier labs to step out of I am in business of getting you a better model every 3 or 4 months into I am trying to build a user application which is kind of encompassing. This is maybe also why Sam Altman was so much pushing for the super app concept in OpenAI, which let's see if it worked or not. So far, it does not to be like a splash that they probably hope for. But this integration of the work codecs and the actual GPT into a single app seems to be the step in the direction.
Even the browser.
Yes, well, the browser was kind of dropped because Atlas was not possible anymore for them. And you can see that exactly the things which people love or hate about the Claude Code is not the actual model under, because that changes every 3 or 4 months, but it's the environment. The fact that they were the first ones which come with remote, the fact that they were first one to come with a work concept, the fact that they were coming first with the looping concept, and so on. So I think that this harness story is part of a way forward, and it's going to be interesting to watch how the frontier labs are going to deal with that. And maybe just a last comment before moving away from this point. So US companies were always having a very good product management because they were used in bringing all the great products of the Facebook, Instagrams, and Twitters of the world. So I think they have a high hand on having a chance to generate good products if they try to or if they push to.
So we're behind, not like with cars.
Yeah, so that is actually
Europe.
This is actually a bad news for both China and Europe. For China, because the environment which is normal or suitable for Chinese customer would be not reusable in environment. So, like if you take I don't know, Baidu or whatever Alibaba apps in the Western world, they would not work that way, and it was proven that they don't work that way. So they are a little bit in disadvantage, and the Europeans were never there, quite honestly. So I don't know that many apps in Europe that set the trend how the app should look like, how the look and feel of the user should look like, that is coming from Europe, quite honestly.
So for the AI labs to make more money, that would mean they would need more users. And higher users. So you said, and I think OpenAI is like a really good example because they had more than 1 billion users, but their Codex app is used only by 10 million, which are like 10 million paying customers using that app and spending more than average. I don't know what would be the average of like a paying ChatGPT user. I don't think they have recently announced numbers how many paying subscribers they have in ChatGPT, but nonetheless 10 million for Codex, that means like it is at least $20 a month for those. So what does it tell us moving forward about the economy, again, in connection with token prices?
Yes. So this is one of the more important aftermaths of what's happening, because OpenAI and to some extent Google, because they, for whatever reason, good or bad, are in a same corner, that they mainly strive for B2C users with Gemini rather than commercial users, which is funny enough because they also have a G Suite and a lot of customers. But the most of the Gemini users are the ones using it for the B2C reasons. Now, why is it not a good position for them and why is it important for the global implementation is that if the frontier labs are going to be forced to generate a premium models and charge premium prices, this is exactly not the way that you colonize the mass market. If you think about it, it's a little bit similar to a Meta situation when they were trying to utilize or monetize the Facebook and Instagram area, or WhatsApp even area of the world. And the reason for that is that if you have a lot of non-paying customers, then this famous famous quote, like, if you are not paying, you are the product. And so far in AI, this seems to be a bit more tricky to achieve. So as a result, if now OpenAI would be forced by a stock market to be profitable, the only thing that they could do is introduce some kind of a monetization into this billion of the users that they have, or force more paying customers, which is going to be super difficult. So as a result, I think in a short-term period, this is going to lead to some of the labs having less customers inflow and therefore slowing the mass adoption of the AI. And the gap between the heavy users and let's say a general public is going to widen. Because it's no secret that the same way that the Facebook and Instagram was like a mass adoption of a social media, was not LinkedIn, right? The same way the mass products of AI coming from OpenAI, Google, or even Meta are the ones kind of increasing the penetration of the AI in population, and they don't probably have a good times ahead to keep pushing.
Okay, so if mass adoption is not the way to go, what are the suggestions, or which way to go?
So ultimately, we're still in a business environment. So there are already proven scenarios how to go. So there are several strategies which, if you look back, and especially US business education is based on case studies of the past. So there are different approaches that you can use. So first of all, you can become, let's say, Apple of AI, to put it this way. So what I mean by that is that Apple is not necessarily selling you the cloud, the storage, which they do, but as a side effect to other things which you get. And ultimately, they a little bit do the German premium car model, that they try to sell you devices which are kind of interesting. So we do see companies trying to come up with the new devices. OpenAI has a separate division about it. Like Google was having products which they can use anyway, like the Pixels of the world. Microsoft to some extent as well. Anthropic seems to be a little bit out of this game, so it's interesting to see where that goes. But basically trying to wrap it into something else, being it even hardware, and sell it. So that's the Apple strategy. I'm not sure if it can be done by other than Apple in AI, by the way, because Apple is going to try that strategy again. They don't seem to be fighting for the best model. So they seem to be fighting for the same thing. So that parking place is pretty crowded already, to be honest, but it's one of the way. The other alternative, the second is moving to becoming an oracle of AI. What that means is, the business model of Oracle is we are expensive, but we are super secure, and we are suggested option for, let's say, enterprise customers, because they know they are buying a robust, secure solution. So that would mean ultimately a segmentation of the market, that you would go after those customers who are willing to pay premium for being being a kind of secure solution, stable, and one which passed the certifications. Now, if you look on the market, this is more or less Anthropic is the closest in that corner, even though they don't strive for it, but they would be even with their mentality of being safe and being the good ones in a AI era, is something which they would like to go. So that's the second approach. The third approach which you can think of is that you would like to go for the hits economy. So you would go for, hey, I acknowledge that I will be copied the same way that the businesses always are. If you ever worked with China, it means that you don't have more than 3-4 months advantage. Then somebody from China is going to come with a copycat product. So you're fine with that and you're going to accept it, but your business model is going to be based on, I sell the window of a time where I can have the advantage. Now, that was basically a strategy of OpenAI for quite a few times. They were trying to have this, now it's getting super expensive. So they would need to have a very innovative lab of the model innovation to make it happen. And I don't seem to see any player on a Western market like playing this game so far. And those which were trying were failing in that. So that doesn't sound like a good strategy. One which lends itself naturally because it's the easiest one to think of. It's becoming a utility. So like selling, let's say, AI as electricity, meaning that you would have to be very good at making it available everywhere you need it. It's the same way that you have sockets in all of the rooms of the house. If you have to have like a cable for every single device coming to like a central power station would not be nice. So here the players which are the Amazons and the Microsoft of the world could be the one because they already have your connection and like selling AI on a side is good. I'm quite favorable for Amazon in this strategy. I think they could do it and they probably want to do it. This is the whole strategy of a Bedrock. For Microsoft, I'm a little bit confused because if you remember, they were trying to come with own models. Now they were doing OpenAI for some time, which was the most expensive model. So they would need to embrace more the cheaper options because you will not buy premium electricity. Most of the times you will like buy the cheapest one. So that's the thing. And the fifth one, which is the last one, is you're gonna, it's a little bit of the analogy of the restaurant. So you own the workflow and you don't charge for the like ingredients, but you charge for experience. So it's the same way you come to the restaurant. On your bill is not like what ingredients went into your soup or your meal, but it's the general meal, right? And you're coming to the restaurants not even for the meal maybe, but for like meeting friends, enjoying the experience. So all the companies which are kind of providing the harness and experience, but like taking it to a little higher level than managing the AI. So these would be applications where like perplexity models. So you are actually owning the research experience which they started with. Now they're a little bit behind now, but their model could have worked. And to some extent, Cursor was trying to do it before kind of Anthropic killed it with Claude. So that's another model. So one of these 5 models are one of the possible strategies how it can go further.
Okay, so and what are the practical outcomes for companies then? What will happen?
Well, first of all, everybody should make it clear where they stand on this cheap versus secure spectrum.
Okay.
Because the services will naturally like spread out in this interval. Am I primarily budget driven or am I primarily, let's say, security, safety / whatever, stability driven? Because this is not a secret. If you're running the open source ones, you're very likely to rotate the model. So your model needs to be your approach needs to be accommodating for the models are changing because every now and then there's a different open source one. And also you have to build a lot of things yourself. So if you are on like do your own hobby kind of approach, you're a smaller company, you can afford it, you're a startup, you don't have any other options, you go for it. So that's the first thing which the company should realize. The second thing which the company should realize is, okay, what I am going to do when it comes to my affinity to best model. Because if I need really, like if I'm healthcare and I need like a super high-end solution because it has a value for me, then it's great. When I gonna go it for, let's say, I don't know, summarizing documents, the models which I already have are good enough. So that's the kind of aspect, and that is going to bring you to how vertical the thing is going to be. So am I happy to take somebody who prepackaged the solution for me because it's like my use case is perfectly following it, or do I need to develop myself? Well, and then the last aspect, which is interesting, is in what jurisdiction I want to operate and to what extent I want to be independent from what's happening. Because very likely the governments are going to try to step in. And this is one thing which we don't know to what extent the China government is already subsidizing the development of the models and is trying to do this dumping, colonizing strategy. But the US government very clearly expressed an option and interest in doing so. And we in Europe have an especially interesting dilemma here because I think we're neutral enough. If we want to consume US models, we could. but we are not bounded to.
Mm.
And the last developments of, hey, like, it doesn't really matter that you are Anthropic employee, you are not a US citizen, so you can't use Fable 5 anymore. I mean, these kind of weird scenarios are probably turning a lot of companies into thinking, okay, war is the least evil for me. And for many companies, the least evil is the open source, open weights approach, where I at least control the model. Maybe it's not the best you can get, but it's running for me. And I will be not surprised in the middle of the night that somebody in the White House decided that I can't use it anymore.
Mm.
So that's probably another dimension people should realize.
Okay, Filip, that's our time. Do you have a last 2 cents that you wanted to add to this discussion? Like, okay, I'm a business operator. I'm listening to this podcast. Like, what should be the one thing that I take away?
I think that the people should realize that there is a real spectrum, that it's a time to think about it in a real breadth. Do I need to go for price? Do I need to go for premium? And make a conscious decision about it. And when you make the conscious decision about it, make it your strategic advantage. So don't stumble from one model to another just because this one is in the news, but go for something and don't be shy to build things over, because now AI is also useful in like helping to scaffold the things which are probably not coming, and make your own choice. And I think we will keep on watching this, because this is very likely to have another strong dynamic after all the IPOs are closed and after we see a few more months of China firing new models into the space of AI.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. That's all for this episode. As always, find Mindset wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. You can also follow us both and the podcast on LinkedIn. And you can find more information on mindset.com. That's spelled with AI. Thank you and bye, Filip. My name is David, and we'll come next time.
For sure.
Bye.